Hi guys, this is D. Durrell with D. Durrell Life Solutions. What I'd like to do is talk about today is domestic violence in the elderly community, the elderly population in the black community. Now, as we all know, the elderly community is a community that is, to me, what I consider a forgotten population, a population that does not get a lot of attention, a population that seems to be alone, um, seems to be a population that's isolated to themselves. And the fact of the matter is that in the African American community, we don't value our elders like other groups of people value their elders. Now, one would say that in our community, we do value particularly a big mama, a Medea, a grandmother per se, but I'm looking at it from the perspective of grandfathers, grandmothers, great grand, and etc. And the bottom line is that there are a lot of elderly black people who are being abused, who are being verbally abused, financially abused, physically abused, whether it's by their family or living in other healthcare, residential care type facilities. These things do happen. Every year there's a large amount of black people who complain about their treatment in facilities. There's a large amount of black people who are placed in those facilities because their families are not providing adequate care. Now, I have talked in many instances about working for government agencies that deal with this. One per se is Adult Protective Services. I have contracted with Adult Protective Services for well over 7 to 8 years, and I am still in contact and network with them from time to time, although I don't do a lot of work for them as I used to in the past. But from time to time, I will get a client who has experienced that type of abuse, who is elderly and can't take care of themselves, and a family member or someone who's supposed to take care of them are exploiting them. In many of those situations, when we're looking at domestic violence, I'm not necessarily discussing an elderly man hitting his wife or an elderly woman hitting her husband. What I'm usually dealing with elderly people in our community is that they are abused by a family member, or they are abused by someone providing some type of health care services to them. Elderly abuse is more prevalent than we would think because it's not always reported. Usually when it's reported is when things nearly have really went bad to a point where the police have to get involved and etc. But we also never discuss the psychological effect, the depression that kicks in, the anxiety of an elderly person being disrespected by people that they spent their whole life raising, protecting, and loving. I've seen a large percentage of elderly people in our community who were depressed because of the way their family treated them, the lack of respect, the lack of honor, the lack of love. This is an experience that happens to a lot of black women and men, particularly women, in our community at that age. Now, when I talk about elderly, I'm basically talking about those people who are well over the age of 60, 65, and they have some level of hindrance in their ability to function the way they once did, and they need the assistance of others. In that assistance of others, you will find people that are willing to do things to try to exploit and take advantage of the disadvantaged elderly person. It's quite sad, but that is a reality. So I wanted to create this video so that for those who may not contact their grandmother as much, they may not visit as much, they don't, have contact with them, show them some attention, take some time. If it's just once a week, twice a week, a few times a month, any time that you take out to help your whether it's an aunt, uncle, grandparent, or what have you, or your own parent, it will be greatly appreciated. So this is D. Durrell Life Solutions.